All right, this is Craig. I'm at Bold Strong and excited today to be meeting with Jyoti Gondek. Jyoti Gondek is councillor in the city of Calgary. She is in Ward 3 and she's running for mayor. And we had to steal her away. She only had a few minutes today to spend with us. So we have a conversation over Zoom and a great conversation. And anyways, let's just dive right into it. This is Jyoti Gondek. Here we go. Thanks very much, Jyoti, for coming on the show. Excited to have you. As a quick introduction, you're a mayoral campaign. You're currently a councillor. And yeah, excited to have a quick conversation with you. And I know our time is short. So yeah, how are you doing? What's going on?
I'm doing really well, Craig. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're running for mayor. You were in, it's Ward 3 that you're in.
Yes.
As a councillor right now. So what's the motivation to be mayor? And I've asked a couple people this. Why do you want that headache? Why do you want why do you want to be scrutinized like that? Like what are you doing it for?
You know what, Craig, I love that question. It's a good one. I think everyone should really reflect on why they're doing this. When I entered the race for council in 2017, it was because I took a few weeks to look at the things I had been doing in my life and how I had been trying to impact change in city building from the outside. I had served on a lot of committees. I had volunteered on a lot of boards. And I thought, maybe it's time to get a seat at the table. And that's why I ran then for Ward 3. And as last year was winding down, I thought to myself, okay, big decision to make about what's next. And I realized that I still have a passion for this work. I have public service desire left in me. And so, when I considered how I would run, whether it would be councillor or mayor, I felt that it was time for a leader with humility and compassion, who has the experience and the qualifications to lead the city, but also for someone who's got a vision for a progressive future that involves, the transition of our economy from being something that was based in a carbon economy to something that's more sustainable, and really to build an inclusive and welcoming environment for people to come to.
Yeah, that's exciting. And, and I guess, I think one of the cool things is as we go in, there's a lot of mayoral candidates, right? So this is a big one.
Yeah.
And, I think what impresses me a lot about the, almost all of the individuals running is you don't need to do this. This isn't, you don't have to do this as a job. And so you're really doing this because you're good and you have a kind heart and you want Calgary to be a better place, right? So I guess one of the big questions for me really now is, we look at city council, it's going to get chopped up and rebuilt. And, you're possibly the person that's going to be sitting at the head of the table trying to sort that out. So what's going to be the big challenge now? We have all these new councillors and new ideas and new faces, and no one, a lot of people won't know the policy, and, it's going to be a big challenge. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a big change. And, with every challenge also comes opportunity. And I think one of the biggest things that we need to think about when we consider that, 7, 8, 9, 10 new positions might be open on council, it's this idea that we're progressing and we're evolving into a future that's different than the past. And it's okay to have new voices. And if those voices are provided the assistance and the mentorship from people that have been there before, I think it's going to be a really good combination. And let's not forget, administration is the one thing that's steady in all of this. So
that's true.
Make sure that we are working with our partners on the administrative side that have expertise to make sure that we're accomplishing the goals that we need to for Calgarians. So I look forward to it. I think every change is an opportunity, and this one will certainly be that.
And you can get your arms around these newbies. Is that what you're saying? You can.
Absolutely. I mean, hey, I was new when I came on in 2017. I had known a lot of members of council because I had worked on projects with them. But, ultimately you get to know somebody and you build a relationship with a fellow human being. It's when we start dehumanizing each other and, using the very polarizing language of politics. That's when things get bad. So, I want to make sure that we have a positive relationship going in.
Yeah. Were you surprised when you got on city council, in 17, were you surprised at anything? Like, was it, you come into this new environment, you hadn't done it before, was there anything that was really shocking or that you had to get your head around?
Craig, I had the good fortune of having
Mhm.
served on Planning Commission for 4 years
Oh, great.
prior,
Yeah.
and I had served on a couple of other committees, so I knew my way around
Hmm.
council decision making. But nothing prepares you ultimately
Mm,
for sitting in that chair the very first time that the cameras go on and it's a public
sure.
meeting. It's a little bit nerve wracking to press your little button and speak and ask
Yeah.
your questions. It's that worry of how will I sound and is this question the right question that I think sometimes stops us from doing the good
Yeah.
work that needs to be done because we get nervous. And
Right.
so it took a few weeks, a couple of months to get comfortable knowing that even if I ask a question that seemingly doesn't sound right, at least I'm asking on behalf of my residents
Right.
something that's important to them.
Yeah. Are you, and this comes up a fair bit in when we talk about Calgary Municipal, is uh, the amount of in-camera meetings that have occurred. Is that what's your take on that? And like, and I'm, and I guess, I'm in business. I have meetings behind closed doors all the time. Like, what's your take? Is it good, bad? Are we, do we need to fix something, or is it, I don't know. What do you think?
It's an interesting concept, these in camera or closed
Hmm.
session meetings, because anytime we do go in, we list the reasons why. And it's generally sort of some sort of a personnel issue that you can't discuss publicly,
Yeah.
or there's a negotiation, whether it's a land disposition or whatever else it may be.
Hmm.
So there's always a rationale provided.
Sure.
What I think we need to get better at is once we go inside, let's get the details that can't be discussed publicly out,
Right.
and then let's shut it down and go back into public and discuss the things
Hmm.
that we need to. It's when we stay in there too long having a debate. I think that's something we need to stop doing. Get the stuff you need and then move back out to the
Right.
public realm.
Yeah, because then otherwise it starts to feel like a backdoor situation. It's just been too long, and we need to
Yeah,
pull it out back in front of people. So
exactly.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I think it's at some levels, I think that that's probably one of the campaign things. Like people are talking about it a lot, and whether it's and maybe it's a procedural issue, like you're saying. It's not even we're not trying to be sneaky.
Mhm.
It's just kind of the process, and then we just don't go back and get involved with the people again. Yeah, that makes
Well, you
sense.
you actually raised a really good point about procedural issues, and
Yeah.
that's definitely something that we have to work out.
Mhm.
Some of our procedures don't work in our best interest. I mean, we've got committees that are set
Right.
up in a very specific manner, and it doesn't always allow for good work to get done. I'll give you an
Mhm.
example. When we held the anti-racism hearings, we had to
Right.
do it according to a certain procedure, and it was
Mhm.
very public facing and incredibly traumatic for people to relive the
Mm.
crises they had
Right.
gone through.
Sure.
We didn't have supports in place, but we did it according to a procedure bylaw. And
Right.
we've got to be more flexible about how we do these things. When I look at how the Truth and Reconciliation Commission
Mhm.
and the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry took
Mhm.
a very different approach to
Okay.
listening to stories,
Hmm.
we've got to start thinking about more creative solutions as well.
Right. That's interesting. And it's interesting that you bring up like even the Aboriginal group and the impact that group is having on how Calgary's developing and growing now, and especially with what's going on down to the Costco South. I'm sure you're familiar, like, and all the work that's going on down there. What's like there's a business thing situation that's going on down there, and that's really exciting. Is Calgary mirroring their aggressiveness? Do we need to change something, or like, and I guess maybe part of the question is what's going on the Siksika Reserve going to outpace Calgary? Like, are they going to suddenly have all this infrastructure and great stuff, and then we're going to be in Calgary? It's like, wow, I think I'm I'm going down there because there's more stuff to do.
Well, I think it needs to be, we need to look at it on two fronts. Firstly, the Tsuut'ina Nation is a regional partner like
Hmm.
Rocky View County or like
Right.
Airdrie or Cochrane. And so, when it comes to municipal collaboration and cooperation, we have to treat it in the same manner. And I can tell you that
Hmm.
the nation was kind enough to invite city and other stakeholders out to charrette processes
Yep.
when they were first
Yep.
thinking of doing the development. So it's been an incredibly inclusive process,
Good.
respecting all stakeholders. I think the other important thing too is when we've got a strong partner like that with us, we need to be listening to
Hmm.
how we actually take action on reconciliation. And
Hmm.
I'm really happy that council decided to put the White Goose Flying Report as a standing item on Priorities and Finance
Hmm.
Committee. because
Right.
now we've got our Indigenous office telling us which actions can be
Oh,
done
wow. Well,
and
that's
how
great.
we need to fund them. So we're actually, we're moving forward. It's good to
Does
see.
that process aid in the, like we need to be doing consultations with interest groups? Does that process kind of like get that process moving faster then?
I think what's happened within the Indigenous community is we've done an endless stream of consultation. There has been a number of commissions and inquiries, and
Right.
there's recommendations. Like we know what they are. There's calls
Hmm.
to action. We
Hmm.
just don't act on them. We
Oh,
keep
okay.
going back and rehashing everything. So this was a step for council to say these actions have been deemed the most important. Let's find the funding
Hmm.
sources and actually get them done.
Right. That's exciting. What's without going into like, I kind of didn't want to dive into like policy by policy, but like, where does Calgary in general need to like head now? Like, and we're coming out of like a pretty crappy time, really, like where we've had low oil prices, our downtown's been obliterated, and now we've had COVID, and it's like, and I think everyone is just kind of there, and in some ways looking at this election in October is like, I need some hope here. Like, I need some, please, let's hear something positive and good come out of this. Like, where does Calgary need to go? Like, what's the big thing, not like item by item, but what's the big thing we can kind of think about?
Well, you know what? On a very macro level, Craig, I think the thing we need to remember is yes, we were hammered by an economic downturn.
Hmm.
It persisted longer than we hoped it would, and then we got hit with a pandemic. So we went through a very difficult and very trying time. But I think as we are emerging from the pandemic, once we go into recovery mode, I hope we remember the lessons of the pandemic. That being that anybody can be in a position of vulnerability at any time,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
it's not just a certain subset of the population. Anybody can be exposed to issues with their mental health and
Hmm.
addiction. Anyone can slip into poverty. I think if we understand that collectively as a society, we must keep an eye out for each other and we must have supports in place,
Right.
that's going to help us be stronger when we move forward. Because if your workforce is not well,
Hmm.
then it can't participate fully. So we've got to look at all things like healthcare, childcare, access to transportation, access to all kinds of positions. That's how we come back. And, more
Hmm.
specifically to your point, Calgary has approved a downtown revitalization strategy
Yep.
that
Hmm.
was about 5 years in the making with a number of different stakeholder groups, including the private sector. And it's a strong strategy. So we
Wow.
need to stay true to that. We've invested $200 million in it. We
Hmm.
are starting to see the first couple of phases coming through now, where we've got an incentive program to convert some of those vacancies to residential spaces.
Right.
The next phase will be how do you take that office space and reimagine it for a different type of business?
Mhm.
But we've got to focus on how our downtown can be a place where people don't just leave after work,
Right.
because it's that strong core that helps to build a strong city.
Yeah, in some ways I feel like, and you're probably much better traveled than I am. And I've been to other cities. Like I remember going to Ottawa, years ago, and it was like, man, that city shuts down the downtown at the end of the day. There is nothing going on there. And Calgary's almost in the cusp of, you know, you can kind of go downtown or maybe you don't. Like it's, and it could go either way, I guess, right? Depending on what choices we make and who's here. And
Well, the choices we make and the actions that we take. I mean, when you think about how our city was created, it was in
Mhm.
the heyday of it's, to be technical for a minute, we segregated our land uses. So we decided that where you
Right.
work should not be close to where you live because you need that
Yeah.
separation. And where you go to school and where you play hockey, we separated everything out. And I think over time we realized that that's incredibly wasteful in terms
Mhm.
of people's time, and
Yeah.
that's the one
Yeah.
commodity that you can't generate, right? So
Right.
if we want people to have a better quality of life, they've got to have those amenities close by. And downtown didn't necessarily do that well.
No, it didn't.
And our periphery communities didn't do that well.
Hmm.
So let's get a better mix of amenities for people to have a great quality of life.
Yeah. Do we have like a big vision? Like, and I've said this to a few people, and I feel like sometimes we need, like, Calgary just needs to have someone, you possibly, needs to go out in front of everyone and say, okay, here's where we envision Calgary being. Because I think that we get into this, crummy economic environment, for a number of reasons. And it's hard to envision what we're going to be. And we say, hey, we're going to increase technology. We're going to have technology companies show up, but we're not really talking about Calgary being this, like, we want to be the center of North America, or, there just needs to be maybe a tagline or something. Someone, maybe you, needs to jump up and say, this is Calgary. This is what we're going to build over the next few years.
You know what, Craig? It's interesting because people get caught up in focusing on things and
Mm-hmm.
policies, and they forget that it's
Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah.
It's people that we're ultimately serving, and it's people that ultimately make something successful. So I think, one of the big things that I've found about Calgary and Alberta in general is we get incredibly nostalgic because we're
Mm.
used to the boom and bust cycle. Like, we
Yeah.
know it goes up and it comes down, and then
That's a
it
good
goes up
point.
again. It's not coming back up the way that we
Yeah.
expected it would.
Yeah.
And so this nostalgia and this hunger for the past that we
Mm-hmm.
have, I hope what we do now is understand that although we were amazing at energy production in a carbon based economy, we also learned lessons from it. We learned that it's unsustainable. So I
Mm-hmm.
would like to capture what every global corporation is saying in terms of sustainability and say, come to Calgary because we're a center of excellence for the transition economy.
Right.
Our history with oil and gas has taught us that the future of energy production needs to be cleaner and more sustainable. We
Mm-hmm.
know how to do that. Same thing with agriculture. We've got long roots in farming and ranching, right?
Yeah.
Let's start talking about the evolution to food security and food sustainability. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's bold moves like that to have our own identity as a
Mm-hmm.
center of excellence for a progressive economy. That's what's going to stick. That makes people feel like there's hope, to your point.
Yeah.
It makes people feel like they can try something new, and they understand that we're transitioning away from something that we're not forgetting, but we're moving it forward in a different
Mm-hmm.
model.
Yeah, and it's exciting. I think we hear a lot about the opportunity we have to take advantage of our innovative capacities, our intellectual capacities, and showcase those to the world. It was interesting. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, you think back. I don't even know how long ago. It was a long time ago, and they discovered there's oil mixed with sand, and then it gets branded, and then how are you ever going to get that out of the sand? And it was this massive problem, if you recall, and then we figured it out. And it, like, there is an amazing amount of innovation that's gone on in Calgary, or in Alberta rather, not just Calgary, but Calgary has been an amazing hub for innovation. We can sell that, like, we can sell that concept, I think, better than
Oh,
we
yeah.
do right now. So
We completely can. And you know what? I was just reading in the news, it was either last week or a couple of weeks ago. A lot of our major oil sands companies have formed an alliance and they've committed to net zero.
right,
So let's take our
that's exciting.
cues from the corporations that are already saying, we're
Yeah.
moving on, we're moving forward.
Right.
And let's show them that this is a place that they need to headquarter because we believe in the same thing.
Yeah, it could be an exciting time. I think one of the big things we've obviously learned is that, Calgary can be a hub, as opposed to, like, there was so much going on for so long right around us. I think it really made us very myopic to what was, like, what we should be doing. And I've talked to companies where, they were very focused on the Alberta marketplace, and one company was basically just building pipe for Alberta, and then when the market changed, they discovered the rest of the world suddenly,
Yeah.
and it was a huge eye opener for them. And then their company just blew up right afterwards. So it was very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so yeah, so you have a cool vision. You're obviously thinking about people, which I think is pretty exciting. Is there, as we revitalize Calgary, do we need to be focused on some of those? I think we've had some kind of cleanup issues. Is Calgary changed now? Do we need to do anything to make people feel safe, to make it attractive? I guess that's part of, you feel safe, it's attractive city. And is there stuff we need to do, and, like, and have we changed really during this last, I like to call it 4 years, but it's really 2 years. So
I think we've woken up and realized
mhm,
that there's things that we took for granted that maybe we really need to think about a bit more. And, I think when times were good, we forgot about people that were, experiencing the city in a very different way. I'll
mhm,
use accessibility as an example. I have a friend who has cerebral palsy. And when I have lunch with him or I go to meet with him for a coffee, we have to very intentionally plan where
mhm,
he can go because he can't
mhm,
get around everywhere in the city. And he's someone that I met about 5 or 6 years ago, and I never knew the struggles that he had
Hmm.
living in this city. And so I think we forget about things like that.
Hmm.
If you consider the situation with homelessness right now,
Hmm.
I think we kind of just went, okay, it's a problem that we need to deal with, but we didn't think about solutions. And I think we've realized that in order to address things like homelessness, you have to look at the root cause. What
Hmm.
happened in somebody's life to create the kind of trauma that they no longer have a roof over their head? And
Right.
what do we need to do to intervene to provide the supports that are necessary? So I think
Yeah.
we've had time for self reflection as well. And I
Hmm.
think we've realized that once you help the most vulnerable people have equal access to the city,
Hmm.
everyone will thrive, everyone will succeed.
Right. Yeah. And I guess, we need to make it, there needs to be, economics comes into play with a lot of problems, and if it's economically more viable to stay within a problem than to go and be outside the problem.
Mhm.
So we need to make it so that there's opportunity, we can help people socially and through social programs, but we also need to create opportunity for them to excel, not just fix. We need to move past that. And I don't know if you've noticed, you probably spend a fair bit of time downtown,
Yeah.
and downtown's a little evolved right now. Like there is a lot more people clearly not working,
Mhm.
wandering around the streets. Like it's changed a little bit.
It
That'll take some
has.
time to clear up.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the other thing is, I really hope that people remember. Remember when we were banging our pots and pans, and we were
Yeah.
thanking grocery workers, and we
Hmm.
started using the phrase "all work is essential." It
Hmm. Yeah.
is. So
Yeah.
let's not forget that. I mean, when I hear the refrain of jobs, jobs, jobs,
Hmm.
and everyone only looks at the private sector and they only look
Yeah.
at, office jobs, let's not forget about the people that are driving you to that job.
Yeah. That's
Let's
right.
not forget about the people that are actually cleaning those offices that
Hmm.
you work in. There is an entire sector of the economy that is not what we've been driving. So let's make
Right.
sure that we remember all of those positions that are needed and the fact that employment means all jobs matter. And let's start
Right.
generating those opportunities for people.
Yeah. What do we do to, and some of that is, you're right. Like we have to bring business to Calgary. We have to bring it from outside. So we kind of have to, build an environment for business to come here. We need to support business that's already here. And then we also have to invent stuff that we have the capacity to invent, but just haven't figured out what it is yet. How do we bring in on the first front, how do we bring in that business and make Calgary an exciting place? We have lots of vacant space. How do we make it an exciting space to be in for them?
Yeah, Calgary Economic Development has a pretty strong strategy about the things that they're going to
Hmm.
focus on. They're focused on things like agri-tech, and tech is an interesting concept. There's a lot of people that say the tech sector has to come here. Well, tech is table stakes.
Yeah.
Any business that's successful right now, tech is part of their model. So
Yeah.
we just need to
Absolutely.
make sure that we can keep up with that. But I think the way that Calgary Economic Development can go about bringing businesses here, the best way is to ensure that the business leaders who already live here or operate their businesses here are the ones that are going out on those delegations. I mean,
Mm,
those are the people that prospects want to hear
right.
from, not the
That's great.
politicians.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we need to do more of that. We need to look at our local success
Hmm.
stories and then put them on the global stage and invite people to come here.
Yeah.
So I think there's a huge role for that organization to continue playing in our city.
Hmm.
And that's how we will make sure that it's not just about attracting talent, but you retain talent as
Yeah.
well
That's right.
by recognizing the folks that are doing good work here.
Yeah. And we have to re-envision a little bit of, we have an awful lot of oil and gas technology here. And it's not, some of oil and gas isn't immediately transferable into just any other technology.
Mhm.
There is a process of change, and we have to re-educate people. We have to, provide incentives possibly to help them find new opportunities. So, but Calgary's a pretty exciting place. I think you're here. So it
I
must
think
be,
it's a very exciting place. And you know
yeah.
what? You just brought up something that I think is incredibly interesting. In your field, you're looking at people's skill sets and you're looking at
Mm,
transferable skill sets.
yeah.
And you have that creative mind that says, okay, this job opportunity exists. This individual has done this in the past. I
Hmm.
think that could translate well. I think we
Hmm.
need to be doing the same thing with our business
Yeah.
ventures. We did this incredibly well. This is the current situation of the world. What can we take and bring over here to start a new type of business.
Yeah.
So I think by working with more people like you who understand the value of transferable skills and transferable ideas, that's how we'll get places.
Yeah. And and certainly when a business does that, they're putting in something different from outside, and it changes the recipe really, and it gives them uniqueness in some cases, and different exposures to different things. So it can be very, very powerful. So
It
yeah.
can be, and it picks up on something you said. You had indicated that at some point we got very myopic. And I think
Mm.
businesses and human beings get myopic as well. We know what we
Yeah.
know and we stay concentrated in. If you open your eyes and your ears to new ideas and you start to understand what component of them could
Hmm.
completely change the game,
Yeah.
that's the stuff we need to be doing.
Yeah. That's pretty exciting. So you're going to be really busy over the next few months, I imagine.
Yeah, it's been busy
Like,
6 months. We've got 3
yeah.
more to go.
Yeah. Every minute of your life will probably get tied up here pretty quick. So
I have 5-minute increments of doing
yeah.
things.
What do you do for fun? Like what's like you can't do it 24 hours a day. What do
No,
you
you
do for
can't.
fun outside of this?
Well, you do have to have a little bit of a break, and I'm fortunate that my family is patient with me. And then when I
Hmm.
do have downtime, they're pretty good about making sure that I'm doing something I enjoy, whether it's hanging out with the dog or floating down the bow or
Mm,
just,
fun.
watching Bo Burnham. Whatever it is, they
Yeah,
take good care of me.
that's good. I'm slightly embarrassed to admit that I've been in Calgary for 25 plus years. I only got in a floaty last weekend for the first time in my
That's okay.
life.
You know what? It doesn't matter when you do it, as long as you do it once.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool when you're floating down the river to see the things that you can't see from your car?
Yeah, that's right.
I remember
Yeah.
going, "Oh, I didn't know that was there."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
It's a pretty neat experience. And there's tons to do in Calgary, right? So it
There
makes it
is.
fun. So yeah. So what's the next big things for you? Like as you're running the campaign, plus you're on council, so that's got to add some pressure to the overall mix. Like it must chew up your time pretty heavily.
It
So
does. And you know what? I chair a standing policy committee. I
mhm,
serve on a number of committees and boards, and we have a very, very big council meeting coming up at
okay.
the end of July every year. It usually runs at least 2 days and sometimes 4 or 5 days because we have to wrap
Wow.
up so much stuff
Right.
before fall.
Right.
So yeah, it is a pretty heavy workload. It's very busy, but you know what? It's something I love.
Yeah.
I've had the blessed opportunity to serve
Hmm.
North Central Calgary, and I enjoy
Yeah.
doing the work. It's very rewarding.
That's exciting. Did you get to Stampede a little bit? Did you get to out there to
You know what? I
make
made
some
the
friends?
decision to not be on park
Hmm.
this year just
Right.
because when I stopped and thought about my volunteer team, there's a
Hmm.
lot of people with kids under the age of 12. I
Ah,
have
good.
a lot of seniors and I've got a lot of people who have health issues. So,
Hmm.
in order to give them the greatest amount of protection possible, I did
Right.
events that were smaller and in the community.
Right.
And I have to tell you, I went on a tour of Silvera's senior lodges.
Oh, and wow, that's
Yeah,
really
it
neat.
was fabulous. I got to meet a lot of
Yeah.
residents. I met a woman who was in isolation for 72 days in her room.
Oh
She was
man,
so
are you
happy to
serious?
be able to sit and have dinner with
Oh
people.
man.
I went to the memory care facility called
Hmm.
Beaver Dam. They explained what they're doing with people who are at late stages of dementia, people who have just
Wow.
come into their facility. And I got to tell you, there's this common bond between the chefs in all of those
Mm.
facilities.
Is that
The
right?
level,
Really?
oh, it's amazing the level of pride and care that they take in the food that they're serving
Hmm. That's really
to
cool.
the
Never would
people
have
that
thought.
live there. We forget
Yeah.
about things like that.
Yeah.
We
No
get
kidding.
focused on the care.
Wow.
They take great care of people by looking at all of the other things that
Yeah.
make their lives complete as well.
Oh, isn't that great? Well,
Yeah,
good for you. I'm glad you
thank you.
did that. That's really awesome. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time and you got to get off and do more of this probably and
Yeah,
keep yourself busy. So I wish you the very best of luck, and clearly you have Calgary's interests at heart. And so
thank
I
you.
really hope you make a big difference, and you probably already have as a city councilor. So thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Really appreciate you having me
Yeah.
on.
Okay. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay.